Pretty much greasy one here. I mean, these are all greasy, but that's probably going to be the word of the show. Josh Parisian, Jamal Pogues. Parisian coming in at plus 220. Pogues making his debut at minus 220. Over under set at 2.5 rounds. Over minus 133. Plus 133 for the under. Parisian 3-2 in his last 5. Pogues 4-1. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, it's kind of tough because you watch Pogues on the Contender Series and got the decision win. I mean, he looked decent, but he didn't do anything that you're like, oh, that's a prospect for the heavyweight division in the UFC. So it's tough because I think Dana was in a good mood that night and he just gave everybody contracts. Like he did that so many times this last season. I don't know if the heavyweight division needs fighters or what, but he got a contract. He is taller. Josh Parisian, we've seen him get controlled on the ground. We've also seen him, get some takedowns of his own. And on the feet, he's not like this big flashy knockout artist, but he will hit you. He'll put the pressure on you, kind of grind out some victories. But he's also in some fights, I mean, he's got a chin. I watched him fight the other day. And I mean, in the first round, it looked like he was completely done, getting wobbled. He was getting ground and pounded. And then all of a sudden, he flips the tables in the second round and he's getting his hand raised by finish. So Jamal Pogues, it's hard to back any UFC newcomer to me because you just don't know how they're going to handle the pressure at this level. You don't know, if they're even material for the UFC yet. And then you get a guy like Josh Parisian, who, I mean, he does have 3 wins in his last 5 fights. So, I mean, he does win, that percentage, a little bit over 50% of his fights lately. And I just don't know if I've seen enough of Jamal Pogues to lay that chalk on him too. I mean, over minus 200 against a guy that's been in the UFC a while, against a guy who has a ton of experience and is somewhat tough and durable and can take shots. It's tough for me to take Jamal Pogues here. I'm actually going to lean Josh Parisian. I think that experience factor, he's going to know what to do if he's getting touched up in the first round. So, I mean, what we saw from Jamal Pogues on the Contender Series, he looks like a big, strong guy. I think he's probably a natural light heavyweight. I think he fought some of his fights at light heavyweight and just put on a ton of weight for heavyweight. But yeah, he didn't do it. I mean, if you're not getting as a heavyweight and you're not going out there on Contender Series and finishing these guys, right, I just don't see him getting a ton in the UFC either. He does have a decent takedown average. So, maybe he goes out there and takes down Josh Parisian and just dominates him on the ground. But I mean, I've seen Josh Parisian get up off his back and even hit little sweeps and find himself up on top as well. And if he gets on top of Jamal Pogues, he should have, again, that it comes down to that experience factor. He knows what he's doing on the ground. I think he can actually get some control time and land some ground and pound. So I think this fight should be a lot closer than the odds lead on. And for that reason, I'm going to lean Josh Parisian here. It's probably a risk. Jamal Pogues might shock us all and come out and be, prove he is a good heavyweight. I just don't see it right now with him. And it's hard to back a guy at those big odds if he's unproven and to the naked eye just doesn't look like he's going to be a big prospect or contender.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same page. I mean, I get it. It's Josh Parisian, but how are you going to lay minus 220 on a heavyweight making his debut after watching? I mean, he had 2 Dana White Contender Series fights. So, I mean, it took him 2 tries to get a contract. First one was in 2019. That was at light heavyweight. And then he goes over to LFA, loses at light heavyweight, pretty much gets dominated by Alex Polizzi, who is a pretty good fighter in Bellator now. Mm-hmm. He won in LFA in his next fight in 2020 as a light heavyweight. And then pretty much 2 years off in 2022 last year, comes on Dana White Contender Series again as a heavyweight, weighs 248.5. And pretty much looks like a completely different dude. Like he puts him on over the pandemic. Let's just say that. He put some stuff on. I can't really say he was in the gym or anything like that because it doesn't look like it. But Jamal Pogues, he just doesn't look like he's ever wanting to like finish a fight. I mean, he's like a one or two shots here and there on the feet. He'll get a takedown, not really try to do too much with it on the ground. I mean, he's been submitted on the ground before in Bellator, And I don't know how you could ever lay that chalk. Like, that's just ridiculous. In his fight, the second fight on the Contender Series against Paul Hanato Jr., he took 46 leg kicks in a 3-round fight. He took 46 of them. So what does that tell me? This guy is like just okay with taking shots. Like, I get it. They might not have hurt that much, but I mean, maybe you just have some massive legs. But if a guy kicks you a couple times in the legs, you're probably going to start checking him, or at least, picking your leg up or something. It just looked like he didn't care. Parisian, that's obviously a path that he could take. Just whip leg kicks in there and take his legs out from under him. But for the most part, Parisian just puts his head down and throws on the feet. It doesn't look like he has too much of a plan on the feet. He has a decent ground game, as you alluded to. A couple of sweeps. I mean, he'll look for that armbar as well. If he gets taken down, he'll look to advance position if he's on top. So I don't think Parisian's a terrible play by any means. Plus 220, you're getting pretty good money on middling heavyweights, and one that's taking on a guy making his debut. A guy that's been in the UFC for, he's had a few UFC fights. So 4 UFC fights. He's 2-2. His wins are against the bottom of the barrel, but they're wins. His losses: Parker Porter, Dontel Mays, and then a win against Alan Badeau and Roque Martinez. Like, from what I understand, like, there's just not a lot going on in the heavyweight division, and they kind of need guys. So I think that's maybe why Jamal Pogues went with the heavyweight route to get that chance in the UFC. And I just don't think, he was a light heavyweight. Like, you just kind of gave up on making the weight, and now you're a heavyweight. And it's not like you're some potent finisher at light heavyweight. You're not going to be a potent finisher at heavyweight at all. So yeah, we'll be done with that one because that's greasy. But I like Parisian too as an underdog. I just cannot get to Pogues at minus 220.